Hi, welcome into Gasthaus, and welcome back for another day. Hope you're having a good day. By the way, if you don't know it, you should know, this is Federal Women's Week, a time each year during which women in the federal system, and this includes, by the way, women in uniform, get together and sort of reassess where they are, where they've been, where they're going, and a lot of them pick up some valuable skills during some of the seminars and workshops that are held throughout the armed forces. You know, we had a woman here at the table last year who said during Federal Women's Week, she said, you know, women will finally know they've gained full equality when we have a woman in the White House. Well, our guest today wants you to know that even though we haven't had a woman president yet, women have had a representative and a mentor in the White House for over 35 years. She is a woman pioneer in the world of journalism. She's a correspondent, an author, a businesswoman, a broadcaster, and a lecturer. She is a woman who has matched wits with about 9 presidents. I want you to meet our guest today. We're proud to have her here, Sarah McClendon.
So glad to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Having a good trip here in this command?
Wonderful trip. A wonderful trip. I'm sort of pleasantly shocked.
Oh, really?
At what I'm learning.
Taking a lot of notes?
Taking a lot of notes, and it's so much better than I thought it would be.
We can talk about presidents and the press a bit later, but since this is Federal Women's Week, Ms. McClendon, we want to talk about the women who serve in the federal workforce, including women in the armed forces. Let's look at your background a little bit. It wasn't too long after you graduated from the University of Missouri School of Journalism that you entered the armed forces as a private, didn't you?
There was a long time in there. I was a newspaper reporter during those years, in between. But I left a newspaper job to go to volunteer as a private when the war broke out in World War II, and to be a WAC.
You made lieutenant, didn't you? First lieutenant?
I finally got through OCS school with the first class from the ranks. We made me lieutenant.
I was told that, as a matter of fact, you were the first member of the Women's Army Corps to serve in the office of the Surgeon General. So you were a pioneer in some respects.
Right. And it was a fascinating job.
You know, you served at WAC headquarters in the Pentagon. You served, as you said, with the Surgeon General. Of course, back in those days, the Women's Army Corps was something of a separate entity from the rest of the Army. Were you in favor of the move in 1978 when the Women's Army Corps was disestablished and women became part of the Army as a whole? What about that?
I sort of thought it was good, and it had its bad points too, and we've often wondered if it was a good idea because we kind of lost a base where to go to for support. But we sort of have that now in the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services, of which where I served for 3 years, and I still am very active with them. And but anyway, I'm glad to see the integration I see out here, really women being treated as real soldiers.
Do you think we'll ever see the day when women will be in combat, or at least serve in combat
Yes,
MOSs?
indeed, of course we will. They can't help but be that way, because we've been in combat before. We were in combat in the Revolutionary War a lot more than people realize, and we've been in the Civil War and other wars, and women will do their share. We're not afraid.
You have been a member of a couple of prestigious Army and Defense Department advisory groups and committees dealing with women in the armed forces. Do these committees, Ms. McClendon, really have any clout? Do the service secretaries listen to their proposals and their recommendations?
Well, I'll tell you, not nearly enough, not nearly enough. They take a long time to work on the recommendations of Dackwitz and turn down many of their recommendations and don't let them get much publicity. Now things have kind of changed this year. We have just, Dackwitz, thank God, has just asked the Secretary of Defense to have a complete review of women in the Army policy study, and we're going to have it. And we're also going to restudy those MOSs that they took women out of.
Okay. I guess the big question is, will this combat restriction for women lessen their chance of promotion?
Well, we think so.
Yeah.
We think that's not an issue. That women, there are a lot of men that are not in combat. I think only about 13% of the West Pointers got into combat. Isn't that right? And a lot of push buttoning going back there, but a lot of women denied good jobs and promotions when you tell them they can't serve in certain areas. Besides, I just talked to a wonderful woman here in Germany, wonderful person, and she's Warrant Officer Pilot Peacock's her name. She said, you know, we're just equal, we're doing fine, but then when they take us out of those jobs and say because you can't go in certain areas, it makes the men look at us a little differently, like you can't go with us, you're separate from us, and it hurts.
Well, the Defense Advisory Committee last month said that the morale of women in the armed forces is at an all-time low.
That's exactly right.
Because of this. Have you felt
Actually,
this?
the morale over here in Germany is better than I thought it would be, far better than I thought it was going to be. But there are instances as that takes over, they don't like it, and the men don't like it. what I found here is that the men officers don't like this system either, pulling these girls back.
Mm-hmm. What are the consequences if those MOSs aren't opened up to women? What do you see down the line?
Oh, heck, you know, they can't keep women out of combat. First place, you don't know where the front's going to be. You don't know where the attack's coming. And the women are trained, thank God, to defend themselves over here, and they'll do it. And they may have to.
Mm-hmm. Ms. McClendon, you're speaking to women all over this command this week, Federal Women's Week. You're close to the seat of government. You've seen a lot of the bureaucracy grind away for a lot of years. Is it fair to say that there's still a lot of institutional sexism that exists in the system?
Oh, is there?
You see it every day?
Is there? There is so much. In first place, I'm trying to get the government to issue the report from the Justice Department of their study of laws that had sex bias against women. Mm-hmm. There are hundreds of these laws, and now the Attorney General has completed a report on the laws. Now, in the next year, we'll bring out the regulations. There are hundreds more regulations than there are laws against women. When we get people to realize that by law, women have been discriminated against all this since the Constitution, we'll have a lot of changes in the way women are treated.
You say you're trying to get them to release it. Has it been under wraps?
It certainly has been.
Freedom of Information Act, open it up for you?
Oh, well, I put in the Freedom of Information Act myself, and if they don't release it soon, I'm going to use this act to bring it out. It's ready. It's even gone to the White House. And the president, you know, the day that he was kicked around so by women, well, he did women a terrible thing that was awful.
The International Business Women's Association?
Yes.
Yeah.
Women there from 60 countries, and some of them went to their embassies about it, and the rest of them went to their congressmen. They weren't going to interfere with anybody down the White House, no business, but all of a sudden he had decided he wanted to use this room that they were going to go through on a tour guide. Mm-hmm. So they wouldn't let them women in, and I don't think the president had any idea when he said, I want to use that room, you know. He didn't, but somebody should have told him. Somebody on his staff didn't. They let him go ahead, and then he got in trouble, so then he went up there and made that skins remark about...
if it weren't for women, men would still be back in the caves wearing skins or something like that.
Well, I was sorry all that flap occurred because on that very day he spoke up there, he spoke about this report that I'm trying to bring out, this study of Justice Department, and said I'm going to bring it out and I'm going to see that there's remedial legislation or executive orders put through to give women equal justice. Well, all that got lost in the shuffle. But I called the White House that very day and told his secretary to please thank him for what he said. And that was the very day all these other women were jumping on him about this skin thing.
Fair weather and foul, huh?
Yeah.
Ms. McClendon, clear something up for us. You've been a member of the National Council of the National Women's Party, which was the organization really that kicked off the ERA, and I assume you're in favor of ERA.
I certainly am.
All right. Now, I also noticed in one of your columns, 1982, you wrote something of a conciliatory column about President Reagan and the mechanics that were in place in the federal bureaucracy, and you say President Reagan may bring about more immediate results in eliminating injustices to women than the Equal Rights Amendment. Are we not hearing about a lot of these things?
Well, you see,
what's the story on that?
You see what I was talking about. I think that was written after his December executive order of 1981, I believe. It was in December 81, and we heard about it in 82. Mm-hmm. That was a good thing to put that through because we didn't have the Equal Rights Amendment. And until we got the Equal Rights Amendment, for him to bring about equal justice for women under law would have been good. But what happened? Mr. President put that executive order through in December. Then he forgot about it, or somebody didn't tell him he'd done it, or something happened. I don't know what happened. He forgot all about it. And then along came June. He had a little mumbles. You know how sometimes bureaucrats mumble. Someone said, we got a report down here. I asked him in July the 28th last year, where was the report and why didn't we have it and when was he going to bring it out? He acted like he never heard of it.
Mm-hmm. Does that happen often?
Yes,
I mean,
it does.
in the bureaucracy, it's very difficult to know everything that's going on, I suppose.
So I had to remind him, and that's why I kept pushing him and pushing him. And finally he said he'd look into it. Well, so now the report has identifying the laws with sex bias against women, include many laws against the women in the military. And that report is now ready. We can just get it out.
Let's go back a little. It was back in the mid-40s that you set up your own news bureau in Washington, D.C. And let's face it, journalism in those days, Ms. McClendon, was a male-dominated world. I can see the slick pants and the press cards and the hat and smoke-filled rooms. What was it like trying to start something like your own news bureau in the nation's capital in those years.
Well, I'll have to say that I got my job as a newspaper woman in Washington 9 days after my baby was born in Walter Reed Hospital, and I got it from a man who because of most of the men were still at war.
Yeah.
A lot of women got their start in Washington when most of the men were still at war. I got 2 or 3 men will help me and help me get started, and my bureau was fine. One of them said, well, you won't be around here very long. There's no point in helping you. He's now dead.
He's now dead.
But I can tell you right now, it's been a rough time, and for 27 years I worked to get myself in membership in the National Press Club.
You later became vice president of the organization.
Yeah, and then they said, my George, if that can happen, we'll have to change the rules, and they did.
Yeah. Well, since those early years, you established yourself as a regular participant in the White House Press Corps. Back in '78, as a matter of fact, you wrote a book that is something of a chronicle of many of those years. It's titled My 8 Presidents. Did you have a favorite president?
Yes, I did. Of course, yes, I did. I knew Lyndon Johnson pretty well, but Lyndon and I knew each other, but we used to fight a lot. He kicked me around a lot, got me fired from some report papers and all that. But my favorite president was Kennedy, not because of favoritism, but because he was a man who showed leadership, and he was open, forthright, and could speak quickly, and he was trying to do something for his country, and he was determined he was going to do something for his country. It's a shame he had it cut short.
You gained a reputation through the years of being one of those people who forced presidents, really, during those press conferences to confront some issues that perhaps they didn't want to broadcast to the entire nation. What were some of the encounters that you remember most?
Well, sir, one, getting the veterans their paycheck on the GI Bill of Rights. There was through some administrative mix-up. They were not getting them all over the country. And Mr. Nixon went to work on this. He didn't believe it, and I told him he didn't know it, but it was true. He went to work on this in 10 minutes coming off the podium, and he fired the administrator of the Veterans Administration and all of his top officials. He got something done.
I want women in this command to know another thing you did many years ago. There was a congressional hearing on military housing, and did you not arrange for a lot of military wives to actually go and testify?
I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was at that time a reporter, could travel with the Air Force quite a lot. We can't do that now, but I made my own tour, and I went out and I saw what miserable conditions how military families were living under in Colorado and many states bases. So I insisted, I got a congressman who was on the committee whom I covered to agree to let Paul Kildare to let me have military wives come in to testify before his committee. I got him to do it. And right at the last minute, a Navy admiral says, we can't do it. We don't have any military, we don't have any Navy women around here. You can't have Navy, you can't have any. I said, sir, we'll go right down here in Virginia to some of these camps and pull them out of those trailers. So we did.
Yeah.
And they told of horrible conditions.
You consider yourself an activist?
Yes, sir, I hope I am. I think people should be activists.
You know, I read once that you believe that one person can make all the difference, and most of your life you've tried to be that person. Is that really the guiding philosophy that sort of kept you going through your life, and is that what you're telling women today?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not that I have done so much, but I have seen other people. I have seen people, one man or one woman, make the difference, and that's what I think everybody should try to make government better.
Before we go, Ms. McClendon, I want to read something that Dan Rather wrote about you. He said, you are and always have been even better than you know, and you have taught by example more of us, more than you can ever know. Signed, Dan Rather. And I want to thank you for teaching us more than we can ever thank you for. Thank you for being with us.
You're very kind. Thank you so much.
Our guest, Sarah McClendon, during this Federal Women's Week, she has been our guest. I'm Herb Glover in the Gasthaus. We hope you'll join us next time. Bye-bye now.